There we go.
Hello and welcome to another edition of the solar panel. And today you'll see a little bit different faces in the screen. So before we get too started, while Justin wakes up and gets his mic ready and everything and working, I'm going to just run our little intro for everybody. Thank you for joining us, and we will be right back.
You are listening to the Solar Panel, the Phoenix Sun Show.
Good morning. It's Saturday morning, another bright and early Saturday morning on the Sun Solar Panel. We've been doing this for feels like 50 years now. And today I am blessed with having the guys from Fanning the Flames as my co-host today. Brandon, my usual Zona, is out doing actual work that he gets paid for. And so the three of us are sitting around not getting paid to do this, and might as well go ahead and throw up a show. So welcome to the show this morning. First, I'll introduce Paul, Dervish of Whirl, and he keeps changing his name on Twitter, so I'm not even going to guess what it is right now. At Dervish of Whirl. Paul, good morning to you.
What's up, Dave? How's it going?
Doing real well. You got to show us that coffee mug again. That thing is huge. Those of you who don't know, Paul is actually...
That's what she said.
3'2", and he wears green most of the year. He's a little leprechaun.
I'm the mascot for Lucky Charms.
You guys did not know that. And also joining me this morning is So Says Jay, Justin from the Fanning the Flames pod as well. Good morning, Justin.
David King, good morning, my friend. It is indeed morning. I'm very disheveled this morning. There's a lot of activity going on in the So Says Jay household right now with people trying to get out the door, and I'm good though. I'm here. I'm happy to be here, and thank you for having us as always. It's been too long.
I appreciate you joining and helping out a friend who lost his co-host to actual work stuff, and so thank you very much. Brandon will be back next week, but for today, these guys are joining us. So Justin looks like Aaron Rodgers. I like that. Darth Void is in the chat here. Do you believe like Aaron Rodgers?
Now Justin's getting a haircut tomorrow.
Well,
I find that patently offensive, but him and I can unpack that offline.
Justin, Justin finds random things patently offensive, so don't worry about it, Darth.
This is true.
Perplex Damage, the OG. Obviously that's me, but no, that's actually the Fanning the Flames podcast, the OG of Suns podcasts. I just happen to be one of the original hosts on the OG of Suns podcast that has morphed into something much better than it originally was in the first place, which is with the Fanning the Flames guys. And I do appreciate you guys joining me again today to pump up this show. I know it's hard to wake up, and you guys are trying to get. This is my perfect time of day. This is my best time of the day. That's what happens when you get to my age. So one of these days, you're going to look back on this morning, and you're going to go, Dave had it right doing Saturday mornings instead of late nights where Paul's falling asleep in the middle of the show.
I only fell asleep once.
I love how he says that with like just a little bit of pride, like that's an actual accomplishment.
Only know that when you fall asleep, you don't know you have. Falling asleep at the wheel. How did I get this? How did I get here? All right, we have got 4 quarters of fun today. We are going to recap the week. We're going to talk about whether the Footprint Center should be renamed in the near future to House of Payne. We're going to go through some true and false questions that should get us going on a little bit of discussion, and then we're going to preview the next week coming up. Good morning, everybody in the chat. Blaze Megatron. So everybody over 45 says, "Morning people scare me, Dave." So everyone over 45 years old scares you. Gotcha. All right. Yes. So I love what Sawbuck says, man. I'm gonna share that. Dave is usually right. It just takes us a lot of time for us to realize it. Yep. Yeah. And by the way, we are going to go in on where Paul was trying to call me out on his show as overreacting to one loss. We're going to go in on that, and I'll show you exactly what the Suns have done to actually correct the flaw since that game that they exposed for themselves. So we'll go into that.
Can I comment on that just really quickly?
We're not there yet.
No.
We're not there yet.
I need to, Dave. I need to tell you though, just really, I swear, really quickly. Paul's enthusiasm for doing that was like off the charts, and then when it happened, I was like,
eh.
That's all you got?
Anyway.
No, this is good. We'll have a good, healthy debate. We'll let the folks in the chat join in, and we may even put it to a vote. But yeah, we're going to talk about that at one point here, and we'll talk about what the Suns have done to correct that flaw that was exposed. They just have a new flaw that's been exposed that they're going to have to correct going forward. And that's how we're going to recap the week. The Suns were 2-2 this past week since the last time y'all joined me on the solar panel. Those in the chat join me. Morning Perplex Damage, morning Blaze. Darth, I've already said hi. Rick Johnson, good morning. It was really great seeing you on Brightside Night. That was fun. The Suns went 2-2 this past week. They lost to the Milwaukee Bucks, who out-rebounded them by 20. And Giannis got every single call once again. You know, it's really great when you're big enough and agile enough that you can just truck people. And the refs, Giannis, who used to lead the league in offensive fouls, now leads the league in creating defensive fouls. It's just nuts. Then they beat the Magic, barely. Then Devin Booker came back, and they blew out the East leading, second best record in the league, Miami Heat. And then they lost to the Raptors. Now, you guys talked a lot about the Bucks loss on your pod this week, the Fanning the Flames pod. And the Magic win. You guys recorded after the Magic win. So we don't have to recap those too much because everybody who watches this probably listens to Fanning the Flames. So and you listen to other pods as well. The Suns basically got out-bigged against the Bucks. But what's new and fresh is that a Chris Paul-less team can beat the number one team in the East in a game. And that happened on Wednesday night on the second night of a back-to-back. So let's talk about that before we talk about the Raptors game. First, the Suns beat the Heat. Devin Booker came back. He looked like an all-star. Surprise, surprise. Tell me, Paul, first, Dervish of World, what did you think? What did you see in that Heat game that was not necessarily unexpected, but was a pleasant development?
To me, it was a defense. I mean, I know because there's a lot that Chris does when he's on the court to kind of keep everybody engaged there. And I think that was something that I was noticing a little bit kind of after his injury was it was not falling off a little bit, but it wasn't staying focused. And I thought that the defense in that Miami game was stellar and just like really kind of shut those guys down and allowed us to kind of get out that lead and just run away with it.
That's a really good observation. Monty said something similar in the post-game press conference. He said that was the best defense he'd seen his team play. That's it. He didn't even say like in the last week or in the last year or since it's just best defense he's seen a team play. So that's pretty good. So says Jay. Justin, what was your takeaway? Pleasant development out of that game.
You know, this team, no matter what, they keep doing things that make me go, oh, they got that in their bag, huh? And I look at that Heat game, and I say that because there's nothing specific. I mean, Paul mentions the defense. I guess I shouldn't say there's nothing specific. We can talk about every little nuance of every little game that they play and what makes this particular game special compared to other games. But I think the fact that we can do that on a regular basis is something that I'm starting to really look at and go, this team is incredibly special because look, since we started our podcast, coined ourselves the podcast of optimism, right? We're oftentimes blindly optimistic, perhaps me more than
well, during the dark days.
Definitely more than Dan. You corrupted me, Justin. We're still working on Dan. You corrupted me to optimism. You're still working on Dan.
We'll get there. We'll get there eventually. But even with that being the case, going to that Heat game, I was kind of like, whoa, this could be rough. Back end of a back-to-back. Severely undermanned. Now, sure, the Heat didn't have Jimmy Butler, but at the end of the day,
Suns didn't have Chris Paul.
Right. And to go in
Cam Johnson
and do what the Suns did against the team that's the number 1 seed in the East. Again, that's one of those things where I looked and watched that game and I was just like, oh, okay. Like we've got this. Okay, we're undermanned against a top seed in the other conference, and we're not just going to remain competitive, which is a big thing we talked about when it came to that Bucks game. Was ran with them even though we were severely undermanned during the time. With the Heat game, again, we didn't just run with them, we blew them out of the water. This team's full of it, full of surprises.
Sawbucks with the comment of the morning, sharing on the screen. If you look at the panel from right to left, that's Justin to Paul to Dave. You see a handsome young man who aged gracefully. I'll take that compliment. Thank you.
Does that mean I'm the youngest looking one in the group? Is that what I'm hearing? Because I mean, I guess A, it's factually true, but B, it also psychologically makes me feel good knowing that I look younger than Paul still, even though we're pretty much the same.
Yeah.
Paul's the older version of me? Is that what? And then the hair came back
of a version.
And then the hair came
back.
So I don't know how that works. I don't know that we need to try to unpack the physics of all of that at this particular point in time, but I'm quite interested in how the hair comes back.
Hey, Tim Tompkins has joined the chat. The only problem here, Tim, old days, good guy, miss you. The only problem here, Tim, is we are a bearded podcast now, so you just wouldn't fit in anymore. So I can't even.
I want to see Tim with a beard. Tim with a beard would look awesome.
If you strap on, don't do a strap on. But if you put on a beard, if you put on a beard for the show one time, we'll have you back.
We lost
man.
Justin. We lost Justin.
Sorry, you guys bring out the worst in me. I don't think I would have made that joke with Zona next to me.
Do we know that Tim doesn't have a beard right now?
We don't. I just
what kind of beard are you talking about?
I didn't have a facial hair or long hair.
I seriously don't know if Tim could grow a beard.
I like
such a baby face.
I immediately looked over to the chat to see if he would respond to that, and I don't know why I thought that would.
There's a little bit of a delay. You might see a response first. So yeah, that Miami game that was really good observations by both of you guys. I was very impressed with the Suns. I went in literally expecting the Suns to lose, and hoping it wouldn't be by 30. And even if it was by 30, I was hoping it would be a believable 30. Like, oh, they look really tired after having to scrap to beat the Orlando Magic in closing minutes the night before. And hopefully they don't look embarrassed, embarrassing. But man, they just took it to the Heat. The Heat scored 25 points in the first 7 minutes of the game, and then 65 points in the last 41 minutes. An NBA team getting only 65 points in 41 minutes. That's pretty incredible.
Yeah, it was like Paul said at the outset, right? The defense was unreal, and there was a point in the fourth quarter. I want to say that it was when there was maybe 2 minutes left, where the Suns had scored more points in the fourth quarter at that point than the I totally just space team. Help me.
The Heat? We have no idea because you didn't get far enough.
The Heat, and the Heat had scored, I think, like 29 at that point in the entire second half. And so we're at 31 in the fourth, something like that. Again, the defense was unreal. And to shut a team like that, I mean, in the Heat, like we were talking about, not exactly a slouch, right? Even though no Jimmy Butler, like we said, no
best
Chris
record
Paul.
in the East.
Exactly.
And they've developed that with having guys in and out all year. So, and the Suns were without Chris Paul. Again, look, I'm not going to play the victim here for the Suns, but I don't think the absence of Chris Paul is being talked about enough, unless they're saying the Suns can't win a game without him. That's the only time Chris Paul seems to be mentioned. But that aside, let's move on. everyone's focused on in the chat. Everyone's focused on Friday night's loss to the Raptors because that's fresh of mind. Everyone just woke up after probably not sleeping as well as they normally would because we're all so invested. You slept like a baby. Oh, good for you. You sleep through podcasts, so good for you. Whatever you want to sleep through. So, but some people didn't sleep as well as they normally would, or they had weird dreams because they were so frustrated with a loss. You shouldn't be too frustrated, but it's still frustrating to watch the Suns come up a little empty. And there was just so many frustrating things in that game. I'm using the word frustrating a lot because I was the entire time. The Raptors were the aggressor from the opening tip. Monty said, we didn't hit first. We didn't box out first. We didn't touch, we didn't actually get into our positions first. And it stayed that way throughout the game. The Raptors are long and tall at all the usually smaller positions. So even though they don't have a guy quite as big as DeAndre Ayton, they have 3 guys going for every rebound when the Suns are on defensive rebound position. And so eventually Monty had to bring in 2 bigs. He had to bring in Bismack as a second big, first next to JaVale McGee and second next to DeAndre Ayton. What did you guys think? Well, let me just finish the quick recap of the game. The Suns took a lead, 107-105 with 3:19 left. And you're like, clutch time. Woohoo! Suns got this. But then the Raptors completely double teamed with 6'8", 6'9" guys, Devin Booker, and just chased him all around the court and wouldn't let him get any sets going. The Suns did not adjust. Monty admitted afterwards, he's like, it all happened too fast for me to figure out what was going on because it was only 4 possessions, 4 turnovers. It was crazy. The Raptors went on 8-0 run, all on fast breaks off of live ball turnovers. Tell me what you guys saw in that you think the Suns should have been able to be able to beat. We'll start with Justin.
Well, I mean, first of all, them running those hard double teams at Book, and that forcing turnovers like it did and forcing the problems that it caused. I mean, that can be a little concerning at this point of the season. That type of stuff probably shouldn't be that big of a problem for the team to handle. But at the same time, again, we're still learning to play without Chris Paul, still learning to play. We're still without Cam Johnson. So frankly, I'll look at that type of situation and say, at least it happened now, as opposed to rearing its head at some point later in the season or in the playoffs, right? At the end of the day, what we need to do is take away from all of these losses, wins, whatever the case might be, excuse me, something positive in terms of the ability to play without Chris Paul, the ability to see what our other guys have in their bags when we might be shorthanded when it comes to, CP and or Book and or Cam Johnson. But at the end of the day, yeah, you take all of that stuff away from those types of games. I keep getting people walking back and forth over here. It's very distracting. I'm sorry.
That's all right. I got to plug in my laptop before it dies on me. That would suck right in the middle of the show.
You didn't plug it in before the show?
Well, it's usually plugged in, but I took the plug to the game last night while I was working it, and then I didn't realize I hadn't plugged it back in yet. So we're good now. All good now. Yeah. Paul, what's your take on the 4 straight turnovers in the last couple of
games? I think this just close end of game situations is something that Suns have struggled with just in general since Chris Paul went down. Mm-hmm. Just he is able to just orchestrate those situations, and Book, Payne, those guys, great players, but that skill is just really not in their bag yet. They're still developing it. Nobody in the league has it to the level that Chris Paul does to orchestrate a game in those, like, in that go time, as Book called it a few weeks back. So, this was probably one of the worst examples of that kind of crunch time, loss of focus, but it's something to work on, that they can take this opportunity to work on it over the next few weeks as we kind of finish out the season, which I'm not too worried about it, but,
as Booker said at the beginning of this, there's beauty in this a little bit, and the beauty could be that they learn how to, in case Chris Paul is schemed out. Now, Devin Booker said when people try to take Chris Paul out in the playoffs, some people thought that meant physically, like hurt him, but no, I think he just meant scheming the ball away, like blitzing, double teaming,
not Patrick Beverleying him.
Right. Well, I guess maybe he meant. I don't think he meant that
him.
though. But that's how people reacted. I don't think he meant it, but that's how people reacted.
Well, and really quick to those 4 turnovers in a row at the end of the game.
Mm-hmm.
Shit happens. Like that was like one of those, like, you kind of watched it and it's like, oh, really? Come on, guys. Mm-hmm. It's not something that happens with this team, with or without Chris Paul. So you can look at it, see it happen, and go, oh my God, we better get that fixed. Or you can look at it, see it happen, and realize the reality of the situation, which is, that was weird, but that was an anomaly. That's not the norm for this team.
Yeah, definitely. They've got to figure out how to play in the clutch. I was just pulling up the numbers. What do you think the Suns' record, first of all, has been in the clutch since Chris Paul went down?
Not great, Bob.
Give me a guess. It's been 8 full games.
8 full games. Records in the clutch. Not all the games were clutch. I'd say 2-2.
Justin?
That's what I was trying to think, was how many games actually had quote unquote clutch time. I'll say 2 and 1 and 2. I'm going to say less clutch games.
They've actually had 6 clutch games out of 8, and they're 3 and 3 somehow. Yet there's a but. Their net rating is -15 per 100 possessions. So if they spent an entire game in the clutch, they'd lose by 50. This is the best net rating clutch team by far in the league. Chris Paul makes a difference, but where he makes the most difference is in the clutch. The other part is that they've had 6 clutch games out of 8. And with Chris Paul, while they were the best team in the clutch for sure at 24-3 before Paul went down, 23-3 before Paul went down, they did win the game in the clutch against the Rockets when Paul went down. So after that, they were 24-3. They had actually only like the 25th most clutch minutes in the entire league, and 27, basically half their games. Now they're in the clutch constantly because they can't put people away early, and they can't win in the clutch. So the sooner Chris Paul comes back, the better for this team. But you know what? You could say that about every single team, and they're one of their 2 best players. So I'm not really that concerned, but yeah, they're going to have to figure it out. And if they don't figure it out, they're going to have to hope that Chris Paul is healthy, because that makes for
he's already back at practice shoot around. So
yeah, right. There was comments yesterday that Chris Paul was in there, and Payne said that he beat everybody in a shooting drill, which is good because it's the thumb on his right hand, on his shooting hand, that has been, was injured, obviously. And if it's still fractured, I doubt they would let him actually get out there and shoot a basketball, because everyone needs all 4, although Payne said he beat us with 4 fingers. Yeah, well, you can't actually do that. However, when Monty Williams was asked about it pregame, that people saw people saw Chris Paul shooting, Monty said, yeah, he was out there a week ago too, a little bit. So this is progress, but it's not like immediately he's going to start practice. It's only when he does start practice where it starts ramping up and getting closer. The latest from Flex, our buddy Flex from Jersey, says that it's going to be probably by the end of March that Chris Paul comes back, unless there's some kind of setback. So, and with Chris Paul, you got to believe that he's going to go on the shorter timeline. So that gives them 2 weeks before the playoffs start to get reacclimated to each other, which I don't think they've gotten unacclimated. So that's good. But the Suns have proven that they're not as good in the clutch without Chris Paul. Newsflash.
Do you have any updates on Cam Johnson? Because missing him is an underrated. I think that he's like our best shooter, And, obviously he won us a game not too long ago with that last second shot that I slept through.
Yeah, that you slept through. Yeah.
I mean, I wouldn't volunteer that information if I were you, Paul. It's shameful.
If they listen to our pod, they'd already know this. So I'm not going to lie about it.
They probably all do. Yeah. So yes. So the Suns do need Chris Paul back. They also need Cam Johnson back. Cam Johnson has not returned to any kind of shooting or taken the court or participated in practice yet. It's been a week. He had that deep thigh bruise, Charlie horse, but he also got knocked in the ribs pretty well. So it could be a combination of both, and they're just disclosing the one, or it could be that it's really just the thigh. If you guys have ever had Charlie horses, those can take a couple of weeks to go away. And if you're trying to play NBA level basketball, as Monty said,
I do that all the time. Try to play NBA level basketball.
Yeah,
fail miserably, but I try.
Yeah, we got to find a GIF of that. So Cam, the Suns are going to be conservative. They have a huge lead, still 7.5 games in the West. They're not going to lose their top seed. Why not wait until Cam is fully healthy? Although it's not something you would quote unquote re-injure. Like I'd be a little worried on Chris Paul coming back early because you could re-fracture a hairline fracture that's fully healed. But with a Charlie horse, you're not going to really re-injure it. So it's just a matter of when he's comfortable enough to play. And that'll happen soon enough. However, do you guys have any concern about Cam Johnson's future based on this morning's early news from Adrian Wojnarowski?
What early news?
The Suns signed.
Woj blocked me, so I don't get his news.
Nice. The Suns, I also published it on Brightside of the Sun, so Brightside did not block you. So if you're looking at Twitter, you might have seen that. Yeah. The Suns signed Gabriel Lundberg from CSKA Moscow to a 2-way contract for the rest of the season.
Who?
He's a guard. Yep, exactly. He's a guard.
He got out of Moscow?
He left Moscow. Yep, he left Moscow. He's a Danish guy. They signed him to a 2-way, so he's not allowed to play in the playoffs. Yeah, who knows if he's even going to play, but it could be a matter of just, wanting some extra bodies for practice and stuff like that. I mean, the guy was considered one of the better players in Europe, in Russia, but he did get out before, as all that stuff was starting, and now he's signed with the Suns. So yeah, Lundberg, get those TPS reports right. Did you get the memo? Did you get that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
About that.
So the Suns signed him. Who knows? He's probably about the level of an Ish Wainwright. What do you guys think? Do you think that tells us Cam Johnson is not going to be ready for a while? Or do you think that's just random?
I don't know, Dave. I've never heard of this guy.
I thought Dan Duarte was going to join us. He is such an international scout of potential players for the Suns. So I thought, he could come on and give us the full scouting report on Gabriel Lundberg.
In fact, he's not here because he was pulling tape on Gabriel Lundberg. is my understanding.
Doing the deep dive.
Exactly.
He's on a Zoom call with the Russian coaches, and he needed a translator.
Zoom call.
Zoom call. Yeah. So I would go more of extra body in practice, and I mean maybe I'm wrong. Maybe what was his name again? Gabriel Lundberg is a diamond in the rough find, but the name and circumstance makes me think it's more of a, hey, he's close in the area and we need somebody at practice kind of thing. I don't know, but
so he emigrated
right?
From
I guess at the end of the time, what's at the
Moscow
end of the point
to Phoenix is what you're saying. And he just
what was that?
To be in town. He emigrated from Moscow to Phoenix because that's the city everyone chooses when they leave Russia.
Well, when you're leaving Moscow in the middle of winter, yes, I would come to Phoenix.
Well, I think I'd pick LA and just stay there. But yeah, I hear what you're saying.
Interesting that he paid his own buyout. Damn, you want out when you pay your own buyout. with his team in Russia.
Right.
But
so we'll see. I don't know if that means he's going to take the Cam Johnson first off the bench role or anything like that.
I think it means that James Jones finally realized what Twitter has known forever, and that is how fundamentally important two-way contracts are to championship runs. I think that's just what it is.
Well, people have been railing on James Jones, so we can talk about this a little bit. People have been railing on James Jones for not using his two-way contracts and end of bench. Like the Suns had a roster spot open until they signed Bismack. And now he's signed a 30-year-old Bismack to the final roster spot and two 27-year-olds to the two-way contracts, completely flouting the original thought of two-way contracts being your developmental guy who might be ready in a few years. James Jones just bringing in dudes who could play today if they hit it right.
But like, who has really ever actually successfully used a two-way contract as a developmental contract for anything that's beyond, like, you know, some dude that's kind of towards the end?
There has been a few. There has been some. There certainly has. Of course, I didn't do the research before this because I didn't know you were going to ask the question. But Golden State's had a couple actually that worked out. Miami's had a couple that worked out. Other teams have had. I think one of the guys who beat
it wasn't
the
Gary
Suns
Payton
for Miami,
the second a two-way
Gary
guy.
Payton the second was a two. Thank you. And there's a guy. I don't know if it's Max Strus or someone of that ilk, but somebody who beat the Suns a couple weeks ago in Phoenix had been a two-way at one point. So there's a few, but it's rare. And James basically has decided that I'd rather have a guy who's a fully mature adult rather than some 19-year-old.
Well, when
kid.
you don't have a G League team to send them to,
what a man.
You know, when you don't have a G League team to send them to,
let's talk about that for a second.
Are we really going to talk about the Suns' lack of a G League team right now? We're going to do that.
G League to send these guys to. There's 29 other G League teams they can assign them to.
Yeah, but yes, you can assign them to a G League team, but it's not a G League team under your control.
You know what the beautiful thing about the Suns is, guys?
This is what we're arguing about.
6 years, we had to care about this kind of stuff. Guess what? We don't have to care about G League or two-way contracts or first-round draft picks. I hope I never talk about another first-round draft pick in my life. I hope I never talk about another two-way contract in my life. And that's not to say that the Suns aren't going to have them. I'm just saying they're not high enough on my priority list right now to care. And I'm hoping they never, ever get back up to the top of my priority list when it comes to the Suns.
Yeah, it's pretty nice not having to talk about the upcoming draft and watching the NCAA tournament for potential future Suns.
Yeah. Okay. Oh, can I just say how happy I am? We don't have to worry about the Suns possibly drafting Chet Holmgren too, because I'm sorry.
Chet.
Like, I'm sorry.
I like Darth.
Can
Ladies
we talk
and gentlemen,
about
this is what the text threads sound like with these guys.
Yup.
Hey, Dave, are we still in the first quarter? Is that where we are still in the show? Just making sure.
Yeah, we're 33 minutes in, and we're still in the first quarter of the show.
We call that the fanning the flames away, baby.
Yeah. And since Darth is here in the chat, I'm going to go ahead and use Darth's transitions that he gave me to go on to the second quarter.
The second quarter.
All right. The second quarter of the show is Footprint Center going to be one day the House of Payne? Now, you guys talked about it briefly. Jump around. You guys briefly talked about it.
I'm pretty sure it's not how they jump around.
Hey, Voida, can you clip that video and send that to me, please?
I need that GIF so bad. I need that GIF so bad.
After the GIF of you trying to play NBA level basketball. So anyway, let's go. Let's talk about
a lot like Nate Duncan.
It's fair.
House of Payne. You guys talked about this for a few minutes on your podcast this week. It is interesting because none of us really thought Cameron Payne could be the point guard of the future. I'm still a little skeptical myself whether because by the time Chris Paul leaves, he'll be almost 30. And will he really be that point guard for a few years as a starting point guard? And is that what the Suns want? So I want to hear you guys' opinion after watching him for a couple of weeks. Actually, he's only been back for a week, barely over a week, and he is averaging 16 points a game, 10 assists, 4 rebounds with 37% 3-point shooting, and he's got 3 double-doubles in 6 starts. Previously, he was basically putting up half those numbers on prior chances as a starter with prior teams before his rebirth as a real NBA player. Do you guys think Cameron Payne is the kind of guy that could shepherd the Suns full time for 82 games in playoffs in the future? Let's start with Paul.
I mean, yeah, I can see him doing that. I think if anything, he would be a bridge point starter. So like when Chris Paul's kind of done, who knows when that's going to be? I mean, the guy is a freaking,
he's a machine.
He seems like he's getting younger every year. But I could see Cam Payne kind of sticking around, maybe being that bridge for like a year or two while, James Jones moves those chess pieces around to get that true, like, younger guy who has, those.
Or just true guy. James
true
doesn't
guy,
care about age anymore.
Good, touche. But, gets that, like, next star at that point guard spot. But I could definitely see him being that starter for like a year or two. He can run the ship. I mean, but he wouldn't be a star on the team by any means. And like you said, his age, not that 30 and 3 years is old by any means. coming from us, 30 is not old.
Coming from us, but we're not trying. Unlike Paul, the rest of us are not trying to play NBA basketball.
So, like, I could see him, elevating to that starter's role for a period of time, But
my answer is where you have
5 years.
Yeah, where you halfway went. You kind of went because you're trying to answer my question. I appreciate that, but I'm going to go with where you wanted to go. But before I do, Justin, what's your take? What do you think? I know where you wanted to go. Trust me.
I forgot the question.
I don't know where I wanted
to go. The question
is
Cam Payne the point guard of the future? You guys talked about it a little bit. Is this going to be the House of Payne footprint center?
So yes. I'm going to say yes. The answer to the question is yes. I think that the way that the roster is shaped right now and what we're seeing from the players on this team, especially the young guys, if we want to keep our young core around, I think Cam Payne has to be that point guard of the future. In the very least, a bridge to that future. And I look at it and I think to myself, so again, answer to the question, yes. Do I like the idea of Cam Payne being that point guard of the future? I'm becoming more and more warm to the concept. And I look back to think about when we first got Cam Payne, right? Like, literally signed him from China. Hadn't played in the NBA for the bubble. Hadn't been in the NBA for a little bit. And a year later, we're like, oh my God, look at what we have in this guy. We get him we signed an extension. We're like, oh my God, that's a great extension for Cam Payne. I run through that process because every single step along the way, Cam Payne is proving that he's something above and beyond what people think he is. He's not just a guy that's a journeyman who's playing, who belongs to play overseas. He's an NBA player. He's not just an NBA player. He's a solid, serviceable NBA role player who deserves a multi-year contract. He's not just a solid, serviceable role player. He's a guy who is filling a significant role on a championship contending team. Is that next step? He's a starting point guard on a championship contending team? I don't know. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm certainly not going to doubt that he has a capability of doing it because we've seen him, like I said, in the past. It's only been, 2 years? In 2 years, he's gone from, okay, well, whatever, we've got this extra guy, to he's a huge part of this team. And I'm not going to sit here and doubt that he's not going to continue to surprise me along the way.
I think where Paul halfway went was that James Jones knows how to sign starting point guards. And whether we end up getting another point guard after Chris Paul retires, I think is a foregone conclusion, in my opinion. James Jones, his first offseason, he goes out and gets Ricky Rubio, who was a proven 10-year starter at the time and fit perfectly with the Suns offense. And they were willing to spend money to get that guy, not max money. He was like 17 million. He was the 17th best point guard in the league. Excellent. Then he goes up and upgrades to Chris Paul. What I think is going to happen is Suns are going to keep Cam Payne around. He's going to keep doing this exact role for the next 5 years as the fill-in guy as necessary, but not the future starter. No, James is not going to go through an offseason, in my opinion, having Cam Payne as his planned starter. However, while they're holding Chris Paul's hand or whatever it is, holding his walker, whatever it is, as long as Chris Paul is the starter, Cam Payne is a great insurance policy. But if you're literally going to move on from Chris Paul, take his $30 million off the books and go into the next season, I don't think James Jones is going to be like Cam Payne or bust as my point guard, no matter how good he is, because he's got a ceiling. And his ceiling is that he's just a little bit too loose to get you through clutch time and get you through the playoffs to a championship, because that's what James Jones wants. We're no longer looking for playoff level like we were when Ricky Rubio came in. We're looking for championship level. And so I think House of Pain is great as a temporary thing or an as needed thing, or when Chris Paul goes down. I feel a lot better about Chris Paul's future in Phoenix now that we have Cam Payne as the backup. But once you move on from Chris Paul, I don't think he'll be the permanent long-term backup. And then Buck Dog said Aaron Holiday will step up by then. Aaron Holiday is really a better Javon Carter. He's not really a point guard, although he has had some good passing moments in the last week or two. He's not really a point guard, and obviously Monty and James Jones really believe in point guards. So that's a good topic, though.
Mm-hmm.
Justin.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Good topic. No, I mean, I guess so. If the answer to campaign is if the answer to the question is no, campaign is not going to be the point guard of the future, meaning the starting point guard of the future. Mm-hmm. I mean, do you look at it and do you think, okay, there's somebody that's slightly above a campaign level? Sorry, narrow camera. I'm over here. Slightly above a campaign level, but below a Chris Paul level, above a campaign, below a Chris Paul.
Yeah, it's going to be.
That's every starting point guard in the league.
No, that's whoa.
There's starting point guards better.
I think he'd be in the bottom 10. I think he'd be in the bottom 10.
I disagree with that. I think he'd be mid tier.
Ricky Rubio is mid tier. Campaign is not quite Ricky.
Campaign's different from Ricky, but
true.
Ricky couldn't score. Campaign can score.
True.
And we're also seeing that campaign can facilitate when called upon. And I guess what I'm getting at is if we're something has to give with players and money, right? If they're going to have somebody that's the point guard after Chris Paul that's not campaign is presumably going to be more expensive than campaign, but less expensive than Chris Paul, I think then you still have an issue with fitting in contracts for, other guys. But I guess that's why this offseason is going to be quite an interesting one.
I think
one probably, or maybe both.
Yeah.
I'm done.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. You're right. There is that point of, they can't pay big money to everybody, obviously.
I mean, they can.
They could be the Warriors and just do it, right? I mean,
the
Warriors have Andrew Wiggins at max money. They've got all these guys at
all-star starter Andrew Wiggins. David, give the man his respect, okay?
And no one is holding that. No one's saying that. Everyone's saying Steph Curry doesn't have any help. Yet he has an all-star starter in his lineup with him. But
okay, let's reserve.
To be fair, that he's not really an all-star, so we can't complain about Andrew Wiggins being an all-star and then complain that Seth Curry,
Oh.
Steph Curry.
shooting better than Steph this year, by the way.
So are a lot of people. And then can't complain that Steph Curry doesn't have help because he has an all-star because Andrew Wiggins isn't really an all-star. But the whole Steph Curry doesn't have help thing is still a terrible argument either way. So we can just collectively agree to throw it out the window. Warriors fans suck.
All right, let's move on to quarter 3.
The third quarter.
All right, we got a series of true false questions here. We're going to go through, and you guys are going to give. You can give a short answer to it. You can give a long answer.
I'm going to give a short answer or a long answer. He is.
Yeah, there he is. So, first question: the Suns. One of the themes we've seen recently is you can beat the Suns by crashing the offensive boards and beating them up on rebounding. The Suns play Jay Crowder as their starting power forward. He's only 6'6", and he doesn't really have. I mean, I think I can jump higher than Jay. No offense to Jay, but I think I can. But I'm certainly not an NBA player. So should we be concerned with the Suns rebounding? That's what lost them the finals. I know it's a small concern, but has that been exposed as something that could hurt the Suns in a playoff series if you just throw everybody at the offensive rebounds? True or false? Paul first.
False.
False. So the Bucks have proven it over the course of a series. If you play 2 bigs, you can beat the Suns. So you think false because the Suns can just throw out Bismack Biyombo as the 2 big stopper.
I think there's a lot of reasons about it, but also we just played the Bucks without Chris Paul, without Cam Johnson, and barely lost to them. So I'm not too worried about the Bucks this season. I'm not any of the teams that we have a shot at probably playing in the later rounds of the playoffs. I'm not worried about from that standpoint. And rebounding's effort. At the end of the day, rebounding's effort, and it's a little bit of scheme. So that's stuff they can fix. Easy.
Justin leaves at the Darth Voida.
If Voida would make these drops a little bit longer, I'd actually be able to get it in too, Voida. So yeah.
So a few people in the chat have there's a few trues and a few falses. Dervish of Whirl, Paul's answer is basically, they can get out rebounded, but false is not a concern because you think they can make up for it in other ways. And that is true. The Suns beat Milwaukee by 25. People they're not even remembering that when they had.
I remember that because I was there and it was beautiful.
And then they barely lost without CP and without Devin Booker. So, okay, so we got some truths, we got some falses. This is going to be something that the Suns will need to address. Monty addressed it in the second half of that game on Friday night, and also against the Milwaukee Bucks for the first time by playing 2 bigs at once. Bismack Biyombo next to another center, either JaVale or DeAndre Ayton. And they also had DeAndre Ayton out away from the basket a lot more than he did earlier in the season.
Missing Cam right now is also a big part of that right now, because he plays that 4-2 and he pulls those guys away.
Well, he can outscore you even if you get out rebounded, is what you're saying.
No. I'm saying that he's pulling a defender away because he has to be covered, and he plays the 4 as well. So that extra big that's down there on some of these teams is pulled out by the 3-point line. So there's less competition down there for DA or others to get the boards. Him being out right now, they can sag off some of our shooters who are in those spots compared to Cam.
A little bit. I mean, you've got Jay Crowder. Can you sag off of Jay Crowder?
Not more than you can sag off of Cam.
A little bit, I suppose. People are willing to live with Jay Crowder's shots because he's so inconsistent.
But he's not going to stop shooting.
Huh?
I said, but he won't stop shooting.
No, he won't, man. He was 1 for 10 from 3 the other night.
I love it. Not 1 for 10, but shooting mentality.
The fact that he shot 10 anyway. Justin sags off. Man, Darth Voida is going in.
Again, I don't think the drops are long enough, Voida.
we need the Justin size drop. Okay. I think the Suns should be concerned. I think it's interesting that Biz showed he can stay with guys in space. He gets low. He certainly JaVale has to stay near the rim. DeAndre Ayton is better when he stays near the rim, though he proved in the playoffs last year he can play on the perimeter as well when he gets switched out. So it's just something to watch. It is definitely something to watch. The second true false. Let's move on to the second one. Well, we already went through the second one. So
Wait,
I'm going to
Justin didn't even answer. Justin didn't even answer.
You didn't?
No.
You've been talking.
No, I think you got thrown off when Paul interrupted you mid sentence, as he tends to do, and yeah, I think you got confused there, Dave. It's fine, it happens.
Or did you step out?
It might have been a word. Paul, your timing is impeccable. I love you. It's just fantastic. Anyway, false. Not worried.
False. It's not a worry.
I mean, look, we can sit and watch every single game and go, well, there is this thing, and I get it. Offensive rebounding. We've seen it happen over a period of a few games here, but at the end of the day, we still have the team with the best record in the NBA. Mm-hmm. Those games happening, those types of anomalies happening, I'm not going to be concerned about because A, I don't think it's something that's going to occur on a regular basis, and B, along those lines, I have all the confidence in the world in Monty Williams that to the extent that things start to become a trend when it comes to these types of issues, he starts finding solutions like he did by taking this little bit of a unconventional step and going, can we give that lineup like a nickname, like Biz McGee? I don't know, like something like Biz. Was Biz Markie? Is that a rapper, Paul? That was
yes, it is.
Is that like Biz McGee? Like that's like our version of
how about Jabiz? Wait. Mabombo.
Mikyambo?
Biz Mabombo.
I feel like we don't need to just combine the names. There's other options that we can do. Dude. But no, look, I'm not going to be. Here's when something's going to concern me about this team. When I'm sitting there staring at a TV watching somebody else celebrate a championship. But that's not going to happen. So I'm not going to be concerned about this team at any point. That'll be my standing answer from here on out. Any questions about the team's performance? I'll be like, nah. Call me after the season and I'll let you know.
Fabio's got Bizvale Mikyambo. I kind of like Jabiz as the first name. So Jabiz Mikyambo. We'll call it that when we got those two guys together. All right. I'm going to change.
McDonald's?
Yeah. I'm going to change the second true false from your notes. I'm going to move it to
notes
giving.
Yeah. I'm kidding. I saw it.
I'm going to give us a chance to revisit the other flaw that was exposed by the Suns a few weeks ago in their one loss in 20 games, where the Suns got exposed by the Atlanta Hawks for doing drop coverage on every play. And they've been doing that for months. And what drop coverage is, for those who don't follow, is anytime like a Trae Young, for example, in that game has his big, in that case, it would be, Clint Capella, set a pick to pick off Trae Young's direct defender as the guard. The center has to do something. The center who's defending Clint Capella has to do something. They either come out and they trap the guard, or they just stay level and try to confuse the guard, or they drop back into the paint to defend against any kind of pick and roll to the basket by the big or the guard and try to stop them at the rim. Suns do the third part most of the time, or had done the third part most of the year, and it got them great results. Third best defensive rating in the league. Really, really good. That's JaVale's sweet spot. That's Bismac's sweet spot, or at least so the Suns thought. And it's DeAndre Ayton is a master at it. However, if your bigs or if your team can use those picks and that misdirection and the shifts on the defense to create open 3-point shots and you're hot, you can beat the Suns with that defense. And if you've got a really consistently good team, you could probably do it for more than one game. So while it's probably something the Suns can adjust to, the Suns have shown in the last few weeks that they have adjusted to it by having DeAndre Ayton much more away from the basket. People have noted, and Darth Void asked on Twitter, and I actually wrote a whole article answering the why, but Darth Void asked, why do you think the Suns are last in the league in defensive rebounding since Chris Paul went out? Well, that's because that's when Monty started experimenting. He started experimenting with having DeAndre Ayton switch out to the perimeter on any kind of pick action where he just does the switch, and then the Suns' bigger guards can stay on Trae Young or stay on the other team's big and do their shift defense. At first, it did not work very well. The Suns for 2 weeks there, were like bottom third in the league in defense because they didn't know how to rebound the ball. They became the worst defensive rebounding team in the league. So even if they forced the miss, which DeAndre Ayton did a lot, they allowed the offensive rebounds a lot. And over the last week, though, they've gotten better and they played really well. And they actually they played so well that now, if you look at since Chris Paul went out, now they have the second best defense in the league. So the Suns have figured out a good way, repeatable way to defend against that, the 5-out lineup. And so they did get exposed to the extent that they needed to adjust to it. And they did show that they can adjust.
That's not what exposing is. Exposing is a fatal flaw. None of these are fatal flaws. I never said
fatal flaw. Nope.
No, saying exposed.
Show me a dictionary definition that exposed means fatal flaw. Show me a dictionary definition.
When you're going out there with headlines saying they exposed something, that means something that is a flaw that could take them down.
They beat the Suns with something that the Suns were doing.
Right, and they can adjust to it, which is what they did.
At the next game, not in that game. If the Suns had adjusted in that game, it wouldn't have been exposed.
It's not exposing requires a track record.
All right, everybody, hit the like button for us because this is a great opportunity for you to actually weigh in on this. Smash that like button. Put in the comments in the chat whether you think what the actual definition of exposed is.
I like what Fabio
wanted to go
said.
to the extreme, saying that it's a fatal flaw. I never said it was a fatal flaw, but it was a flaw for that game that got exposed and the Suns got beaten with.
I feel like Paul and Dave talking about, anybody being exposed is something that nobody wants to wake up to at 8:00 in the morning on a Saturday.
Well, so says Jay got exposed for skipping out every segment, the beginning of every segment. So is that fatal? No. Can he adjust? Yes, but he still got exposed.
I adjusted in my return.
Yeah.
But that's how the NBA game works. It's the entire league is about adjustments. Like we talk about in the playoffs all the time. It's like, okay, Team X does this, then they made adjustments. That's not exposing somebody. That's the chess game that is the NBA.
Yeah. But for to force a team to make an adjustment is to expose the thing that they get beat by.
Gentlemen, if I may interject really quickly, I feel like maybe where we're lost here is you two have different definitions of expose. I think that perhaps Paul
Are you gonna make me stand up and show what I'm really wearing today? No, I'm just kidding. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's. I'm gonna.
You can't come back from, but it's not fatal.
Oh, it could be fatal.
Not for me.
I feel like somebody might, like, maybe in the chat, like somebody's going to like be so shocked there could be like
there may be kids in the room.
Open to view, not shielded or protected. Thank you, Blaze Megatron, for actually looking up the definition. We got some smarty pantses in our chat. That doesn't mean you can't close the view.
Hold on, but it does say
later.
You're not shielded or protected
in that moment.
That's all it's definition. I just saw it.
You sound like one of my kids. They're not teenagers anymore, but basically anything that happens when you're young.
So if somebody does something if somebody gets a freaking turnover, does that mean they were exposed in the moment? Because in that moment.
No, but if you can do the same thing over and over again in a game to cause that turnover, that's exposing them until they fix it.
So then the Suns' inability to
in that
maintain
game
possession at the end of the game was exposed by the Raptors.
They did expose, yeah, the Raptors did expose that if you trap Booker and you engulf him with two super long defenders and you don't have Chris Paul to outlet to, that they got exposed in that moment. That doesn't mean they can't fix it. But also, hold on here. The Suns don't have to make a huge, it's not like every game that can happen. But the Suns did play drop coverage the entire season until they got exposed in that game. And now they've changed it to try other defenses so they won't get exposed in the future when the next team tries to beat them that way.
Now, if that is true, that certainly, I think, suggests that they in fact were exposed because they made a significant change to their defensive strategy.
Yeah, thank you very
much. Paul.
We'll stop there. All right, moving on to the third true false. Thank you for agreeing with me. I appreciate that.
We have a special episode of the Solar Panel where you guys just argue this for like 3 hours, and I sit there and just like hang on.
People will just, it'll be one of those live streams where people will just check in every few minutes and see if we're still on the same
exactly,
topic.
Dude.
And go, yeah, they are. So then they switch off to another tab. It'll be a live stream. Okay, next true false. The Suns will be the first team to clinch a playoff spot again next season.
Dude, I love that. I love what a ridiculously premature question, and I love it.
Then Justin, go ahead and answer.
Oh, 100% true. Obviously, like I'm thinking we'll probably clinch our playoff spot by late February next season.
All-Star break.
Yeah.
Just be 48-0 at the All-Star break next year.
Perfect.
46-2, but
I do want to say that I do appreciate and Zona was the one who provided our true falses today. Thank you, Zona, for doing that. It's interesting because the question really is basically, will the Suns be the best team in the league again next year? Zach Lowe on his podcast that he released, one of his 5,000 podcasts a week, one of them this week with Bill Simmons. He said that that he expects a healthy Clippers and who else? Denver to be projected as top seed contenders next year. With all apologies to the Suns, because the Suns have already hit their ceiling, and everyone else's potential is higher than the Suns' current value. That's basically the gist. Now, Zach, to his credit, said it like could be, maybe, blah, blah, blah. But the way he's talked about the Suns all years and last year was they've already hit their ceiling. Let's see if somebody else who hasn't proven that they can do it can exceed that ceiling by getting healthy.
How do you say that a starting lineup of a top 6 lineup of 4 guys who are 26 at the oldest are like have hit their ceiling?
Paul just said like the most logical thing I've ever heard him say in the 20 plus years we've been friends.
How exposing Zach Lowe?
How can you say that? Oh my God. Like the complete lack of just common sense.
Audacity.
It's shocking. And I'm sorry. We heard the same thing last year. Oh, the Suns are a fluke. Okay, hold on. Actually, no, let's take this back. Last year it was they're a fluke. Last year it was, oh, everybody else is hurt. Last year it was, what if Jamal Murray were healthy? But guess what? Now what? Now that that's proved that wasn't a fluke, it wasn't injuries. Now it's now they've reached they've peaked. They've peaked because those 23-year-olds, 24-year-olds on the team are really on the downside of their career. Get out of here with that shit. Excuse me. I'm sorry. This is why I can't podcast on a Saturday morning. Because
I get up the day.
Zach Lowe. That was Zach Lowe. Is that what I heard?
I was.
Duly noted.
Yes.
I got emails guys.
I think the Suns don't have another gear in the playoffs, and yet last year they showed they had another gear just by being even better than they were in the regular season to make it to the finals. Why do you need even more gears than the finals team?
No, I mean, we could have used maybe one more gear last year, I guess.
Maybe one more. We need
They
that
had more
NOS.
gears than anybody else in the West.
Oh, by far.
Actually,
if we're being completely honest, that I will go to my grave saying that last year that was on me. I shouldn't have left Phoenix. My bad, guys, during the finals.
Yeah, that is a problem.
I usually get met with the same level of silence when I say that to anybody else too. I did.
If I remember correctly.
I did.
But anyway, okay. Next, true false. Should we be worried about Cam Johnson's injury? And worried being he's going to be out longer than just is it one of those day-to-day things that lasts much longer than it should? I guess is the question. So we'll start with Paul.
I mean, I'm not worried about it because it's not a systemic injury. I mean, those things can take a while, but I mean, we've got some time. We're obviously still competitive. It's rest, so he'll be nice and fresh for the playoffs. Our team is such a well-oiled machine that even a guy who's out for a couple weeks can slide right back in and be immediately productive. There isn't a lot of adjustment period, so I'm not too worried about it.
All right, Justin.
No. I mean, unless we get some report that says otherwise, let's not forget that
they signed Gabriel Lundberg.
A report that says not by incredible reaches implies or infers anything different. But I remember he in that same game where he got hurt, he played the rest of the game after both.
That's just wild
injuries. And I get obviously there's
a career high.
And scored a career high. I get that there is adrenaline that kicks in and what have you, but at the same time, even with that, if it was really that bad of an injury that required anything more than him sitting out just for a short period of time, it'd be hard pressed to think that he would go back into the game. And let's also consider whether or not we're in a situation where if this is the playoffs, maybe Cam Johnson's already back, but since we've got a sizable lead, there's no reason to rush him back because like Paul said too, this team clicks so nicely that you don't really have to worry too much. And I would agree with him about reincorporating him into, any sort of system or into the rotation. So I'm not going to worry about it. If we go another week or so and he's still not coming back or there's no indication, then maybe I'll start to get a little bit worried, but no, and I think maybe that goes to this team's entire, next man up mentality. All of these guys being out for any period of time should worry us. And maybe it worries some people more than it worries others. But I haven't really sat back at any point and been like, oh no, I can't believe this. Here we go. This is what happens. Even with Chris Paul. So the same thing holds true for Cam Johnson. And I think, ultimately, I think Cam will be back, soon. Yeah. And as long as it's not anything that lasts long term, I think we're fine.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a false. He is staying out longer than all of us hoped, but he'll be fine. He has a month before the playoffs start. It's all good. Suns have such a big lead; they're not going to lose that lead. They're winning enough games. They're learning different ways to win games. It's great. This is a perfect opportunity for the Suns, as long as everyone gets healthy by the playoffs. That's the key. Just get healthy for the playoffs. That's what matters.
Can I say really? I just interject with that one thought on that. Call me crazy, and knock on wood. And maybe I shouldn't even say these words because I put them into the ether, but I'm going to.
Dave, work the mute button.
If Chris Paul for some reason isn't back for some or all of the playoffs, I still think we win the chip. I don't know if you really need to that. I didn't want to say it too loudly.
If you can't beat the Raptors on a Friday night, how are you going to win the chip?
You're going to loss. You're going to say that. I mean, we lost to other teams this year too, Dave.
They were exposed, but anyway. All right, let's move on. Let's move on to
the fourth quarter.
All right, for the fourth quarter. Did you get it? You got it good? All right. Fourth quarter.
It's the quickest pee ever.
Next. The Phoenix Suns are play a few more games over the next week.
I would hope so.
And I forgot to put in who they are actually playing, so I'm going to pull that up right now.
I got it, Dave.
They do have. Do you? All right. Tell us who they play over
that
the
is
next
the most planning Paul has ever done for a podcast.
That's awesome.
No, I just happened to be looking at the schedule because I was trying to see how many more games there were left. We got the Lakers on Sunday on ESPN. The Pelicans on Tuesday, Houston on Wednesday, and Chicago on Friday.
All right, thank you. So you got the Lakers at home. The Lakers just beat somebody with another 50 burger from LeBron last night. And so the Lakers got their win under their belt, so they're going to come in a little flat, I'm sure, on Sunday. You've got the Pelicans who've already lost CJ McCollum. This time it was COVID protocols. So he's probably not back for that game against the Pelicans, and they've lost big since they lost him. Even though they beat the Suns coming out of the break, they're one of the teams. They're not even quite the same team anymore. The Rockets, depending on the night, they play well or they don't. And they almost beat the Suns. They beat the Lakers, and they almost beat the Suns a few weeks ago when Chris Paul went out. But then that was a very good clutch moment for the Phoenix Suns to close out that Rockets team. And then they host the Bulls, right? So, and the Bulls, the Suns have already beaten this year. So let's go quick around the horn predictions. How are the Suns going to do in those 4 games? Justin, you go first. What's their record?
4-0.
4-0.
Guys.
He's got a brand. He sticks to it.
4-0.
It's not even a brand. I don't have it in my DNA to ever pick against the Suns. I'm not going to do it. So Paul can be the voice of reason
with my 4-0,
which has proven to be wrong every time that's happened this year.
With my 4-0, 4-0.
All right, you guys are both 4-0. The Suns right now are 5.
Me, Justin.
The Suns are 5-4 without Chris Paul. I had thought they'd be 6-3, but they're 5-4 without Chris Paul right now, and they have these 4 games. I would not be surprised if they go 4-0. No. Every one of them is breaking that way. So says Jay's DNA has been exposed. Nice. Jesus.
I just want to say that I'm happy that Blaze, Megatron, and Fabio are the only 2 that did not disappoint me in the chat.
Yeah, a lot of people are going 3-1. I think it's just being safe to say 3-1 because the Suns are not doing that well in the clutch.
Paul's yawning, Dave.
Clutch moments happen. Yeah, Paul. That's just what he does.
No, I wasn't yawning.
He's always sleep apnea. Do you have a?
No, he's always sleeping. Paul's always sleeping.
Sweet. I'm going to say 4-0 as well. We got a clean sweep of 4-0 across the board for the week. These are all winnable games, and I feel like the Suns are going to start getting back on a roll with Devin Booker and Cam Payne as the backcourt, and just because the state each of these teams are in that they're playing, and their mental state on Sunday, they're going to come out. The Suns are going to play really well on Sunday. The Lakers might too, but the Suns are playing.
The Lakers get caught up with Scottsdale life.
The Lakers might.
They might. There's a might in there.
I mean,
Dave.
Hold on. Let me see if I can get this this phrase right. Yeah, and pigs might fly out of my butt. Is that how the phrase goes? There's a mic.
I still say it's 4-0 regardless. So we got a clean sweep on the 4-0s. Any final? Let's go around the horn. Any final hot takes? Hot takes for the upcoming. You already gave your hot take, Justin.
I did.
You said that even if Chris Paul doesn't come back healthy, they still win a chip. Is that your hot take of the day?
It's my hot take of my life.
Hot take of my life.
I don't know. I honestly don't know what that meant, but yeah, no, I think, dude, this team is phenomenal. I think that the fact that they're getting some credit from the national media, I think should show how far ahead of every other NBA team they are, because the fact that the media even says anything positive about them, again, shows how far they are about everybody. And I think that if Chris Paul's not out, that doesn't mean, if Chris Paul's out for any period of time, that doesn't mean this isn't a championship team. It just means it's perhaps not as dominant of a championship team.
Wow. There's your hot take. Okay, Paul, what's your hot take to close out?
Mikal Bridges is going to be Defensive Player of the Year.
Wow, that is going to be tough because that always goes to centers. But I think it's more every day that goes by, it's more and more ridiculous that Rudy is the leading and the odds makers. He's got the best odds for it.
It's just lazy by them.
Talk about exposed, Rudy, against that same kind of drop, Hawks offense that beat the Suns.
Rudy knows all about exposure, doesn't he?
Yes, he does.
Yeah, he does. The master of exposure. Yes.
And he also bullies children. You combine those two things, and that's kind of an odd combination of things, right? That guy.
All right, Rick Johnson had a hot take of Mikal goes for 40 to beat Cam J's career high. The Twins, Mikal even called them twins. It was funny when Cam had his 38, had that game winner. But yeah, Mikal going for 40. Yeah, Mikal doesn't have the mental attitude to take that enough shots to get 40, but it's possible it can happen because Cam Johnson had 38. So we'll see. I'm going to predict that actually Payne has a 30-point game this next week. The Suns have gotten 30-point games from DeAndre Ayton and Cam Johnson since Devin Booker and Chris Paul both went out. I still think that somebody else is going to get their first 30-point game. Payne's career high is 24. He tied it on Friday night, and I think that's going to happen. So we'll see over the next week whose hot take may have come true. All right, man. Tell us where we can find you. Tell us where we can find you on the webs. Justin, you go first.
You can find me on Twitter. I'm at So Says Jay. Paul.
I'm at Dervish of Whirl.
You can find these guys.
So natural just to do that.
Their podcast with the Fanning the Flames NBA on Twitter, Fan the Flames NBA. On the podcast pod forums, it's Fan the Flames. It's under the Brightside Podcast Network, along with a great new podcast, Into the Valley, who really do a deep dive into basketball. They do a really, really good job with the Shutt brothers and Philip as well on that show. They do a great job. It's a Brightside Podcast Network you can find on your podcast forums. You'll see both Fanning the Flames and Into the Valley on there. If you're not already listening, make sure you start listening. And you should have already been listening to at least these guys because they are the OG podcast, Suns podcast in the Valley. Even though there's 100 of them now.
104.
Don't forget to follow our third co-host, Dan Duarte, unable to join us this morning because he was sweepy. Is he Dan Duarte 1? I think is his new Twitter handle.
At Dan Duarte 1, we reverse cyberbullied him into coming back onto the internet.
Yes.
All right, and our buddy Darth Boyda in the chat. Everybody in the chat, Buck Dog, Blaze, all you guys in the chat. Sorry if I didn't name your name right now. Thank you so much for joining us again today. We really appreciate everybody's support. Come back here anytime. This is the Sun Solar Panel. You can find me and my writing at brightsideofthesun.com, and you can find this podcast on your podcast forums. So thank you all for coming. I appreciate you, and we'll see you again next